Okay, I want to play cut 79 here. This is Kamala Harris, who is a communist. That's right. Every time you hear her name, you should think Communist Harris. Communist Harris. Play cut 79.
Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place.
James Lindsay, what is going on here?
We are watching Kamala Harris, Communist Harris, repeat a doctrine from the early 1920s of Soviet Union. I told you recently when we were together at the Believers Summit that I've been reading Lenin and Stalin for the kind of in depth for the first time, and it's sort of because of this this film that I kind of got involved in wanting to look into that. And it turns out that one of the second most important program, according to Stalin in 1923, the Soviet Union was to undergo, was what we would call DEI. I can't say anything in Russian, so I hope this comes through. I'm going to let my phone pronounce it in Russian to you, but... So I don't know if that came through or not. That makes perfect sense to me.
Разнообразие, фактическое равенство и коренизация. Разнообразие, фактическое равенство и коренизация. Разнообразие, фактическое равенство и коренизация.
Yeah, diversity, actual equality, and indigenization. You can actually type those into Google Translate and see the impossible to pronounce words yourself. Diversity is literally just the importation of the Soviet project. Actual equality is what they called equity instead of calling it equity, and it means exactly what Kamala Harris just said. It meant not just economic equity, but also cultural equity. And then indigenization meant using the various different nationalities and ethnic groups of China of Soviet Union, and bringing them in and showing them that their real expression of citizenship would be through socialism. And so it is, if you actually read about what Stalin and Lenin wanted in the early 1920s for that project, which they said was the second most important project for the Soviet Union to undertake, it's exactly the diversity, equity, and inclusion project that we have happening today. So what you're just hearing Kamala Harris repackaging in, modern English, what was a Soviet project considered of highest or second highest priority 100 years ago.
So the idea of the goal of communism, they first must eliminate the family, church, and or religious life and private property. Let's go one by one. Which one? Let's start with the family. How does wokeism or communism aim to eliminate or deteriorate the family?
Well, let me clarify real quick first that the reason that they go after family, religion, and property so eagerly is because what they're actually after is your soul, which they seek to transform into being communist. And those are the things that protect it. So your family grounds you in who you are. And so they have to split you away like any other cult would do, split you away from your family so that you don't have your indigenous, if you will, to your family identity anymore. And they do that by feeding you doctrines that you are part of the new vanguard of history, frankly. You're moving history forward, and your parents are polluted with old values. This was the Smash the Four Olds campaign in China's Cultural Revolution, for example. They did the same thing in Soviet Union. And what we have today is that you get your kids hopped up, especially on new visions of racial equality, not like the bad old racist days, and get them hopped up on new visions of gender and sexual identities that their parents won't understand. And then you drive wedges. And like we talked about with the law in Minnesota, California, Washington, and lots of these other hard Democrat states, what we're actually seeing is that they're taking that now and flipping it around so that the state can intervene and actually remove the child from parental care if they don't affirm what they're being taught at school and being told their parents probably won't like, to drive even a deeper wedge. And a very low level, though, even Common Core math, which nobody in the world understands at all, made it so that parents couldn't do their homework with their kids. So that bonding of, mom or dad helping you with your math homework because it's hard to learn math, that's gone. That's absolutely gone because the parents aren't allowed to use their methods.
That's right. Yeah, the whole idea of Common Core is that there's a new math that your parents can't be involved in, so you must go to the state to understand the new math. So the church, you've done a lot of commentary on the church, James. I think you touch on this a little bit in the film, is that right? And
yeah, a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Good. So the state of the American church is that, you said this at our Believer Summit, they've been subverted. I know you mentioned this previously. What is the best way then to excommunicate woke communism from the church and from religion?
You're right. And what the experiments of the Soviet Union and China taught communists is that, especially even stronger in the Christian West, it doesn't work to try to smash people's religion out of them. The Soviet experiments couldn't do it. Even with the most brutal force, like in the Pitești prison in Romania, they couldn't force people out of their faith. It just doesn't work. And so instead, you have to subvert their beliefs. You have to set up a false church that teaches communist doctrine as though it's Christianity. And that means you have a subverted faith. It's teaching the faith the wrong way. We've seen a million examples of clips. I think there's one going viral again today of some lady doing this. And the fact of the matter is, or maybe it's a guy posing as a lady, I can't tell. Who knows these days? So what you have to do is you have to be discerning. You have to get very square in your theology, be very discerning, and it's up to pastors who are leading their churches to get very clear on what is required to be biblically grounded in their faith and biblically accurate in their faith. And then it's their responsibility to teach and shepherd their flocks exactly that way, and not to just, kind of have this anything goes Christianity where everything's about kind of a soft affirmation and everybody's, good doing you do you, whatever they want to do.
This whole idea of like, who am I to judge, live and let live. So the current game in front of us is the question of, how do you defeat communists in a domestic political sense? You have rules that you've developed for this, James. What are they, and what are the best ways to defeat an overwhelmingly powerful communist political operation?
Well, I mean, the first rule is really simple and is actually biblical, which is, like I just said, you've got to get discerning. You've got to be able to start to pull apart this manipulated language so that you understand when they use words like democracy or inclusion, that they don't mean what you think. When they use words like transform or transformative, that your red flag goes up, so that you can start to clarify or demystify yourself from their misuses of language that they use to reorganize society without people realizing it. That's the first rule, is you have to become informed. And then after you get informed, you have to get involved. You have to get off of the couch. You have to figure out what your talents are, and you have to get started. But when Jesus in Matthew chapter 10 sends his disciples out, he doesn't send them out just to be discerning. He says that you also have to be gentle. We're up against a very scary beast of a machine. And we can see, for example, very clearly in the UK, which has flipped extraordinarily quickly into totalitarianism, that if you go out without remembering what gentleness looks like in your organizing and in your activities, that it's just going to be used as a pretext to stamp on you and take more power, which of course accelerates this dynamic of society spinning off the rails. Don't think for a second they don't want that to be here. So we've got to be clear, we've got to be active, and we've got to be smart and in fact gentle in how we go forward. Firm but gentle. We can't be pushed over, obviously. We can't tolerate the intolerable. What
is the significance, and I got this from you, it's so simple, of showing, not telling when you're fighting a communist?
Oh, yeah, that's so important. If I can sit here and tell you, and maybe many of your listeners are actually going through this right now, I've told you things, right? But if I don't show you, that's why I wanted to play the stupid Russian words through my phone that I can't pronounce, because if I show you, like, look, here's where Stalin said, this is the second most important aspect of the party. Or if I tell you, Well, Herbert Marcuse in the 1960s wrote that we're going to have a repressive tolerance or a liberating tolerance regime, which means that we're going to support the left wing and we're going to crush the right wing. You might not believe me, but if I show you that document and show it, like there it is right there in print, and here's the significance of this person, or if I show you the document called Politics of Education, which is a book by Paulo Freire, where he says that becoming woke means going through a literal rebirth and a personal Easter, he calls it, and then he has a whole paragraph saying, in fact, the Easter of commemorative rhetoric, in other words, the Christian Easter is dead, he says, with no hope of resurrection. You have to die and be reborn to walk with the oppressed. And then in the forward, it says literally that the point of this is to build the kingdom of God here on earth in solidarity with the oppressed. When I show you that's what the actual document says and tell you the significance of that, it changes everything. When you see the drag queen in front of children rather than hearing that maybe it happened, you see the horror on the child's face. Then you can actually understand what's going on. The quote from the queer theorist that says that the goal is to lead children into an emotional crisis and structure that environment around them to resolve it productively. His name's Kevin Kumashiro. The paper's called Against Repetition. You can go see it with your own eyes for yourself. When you see it, it's actually believable. But until you see it, you think nobody could possibly say or believe that.
James Lindsay, stay right there. Check out salemnow.com. That is salemnow.com.
DEI was implemented by Josef Stalin to communize the Soviet Union. It has been wholeheartedly adopted by the American left to communize the United States.